everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Today I want to talk about modifications on bikes. I want to talk about the types of people that modify, the way I see things, why people modify, bikes that I've modified, what are the consequences of modifying a bike, and why you're doing it. Why are you actually modifying this bike? So, in my experience and observations, motorcyclists fall into three distinct categories when it comes to modifications. The first category is the purist. This is the person that buys a bike and will never, under any circumstances whatsoever, make any changes to it at all. Indeed, the very suggestion that they might make a change to it would be akin to you suggesting that their elder sister is actually their mother. Now, the next category you've got is the custom builder. Now, custom builders take a bike and they totally transform it to be almost unrecognisable from its former self. And they do wonderful things. There's some fantastic custom bikes out there. There is also some unbelievably hideous custom bikes out there. But that's just my opinion. And then you've got the guys in the middle. Okay, which I include myself to be. These are the people that buy a bike and they just want to make it a little bit different or a little bit better. I mean, let's face it, why do we modify? One of the principal reasons for modifying a bike is because when they come out the factory, bits of them are a bit rubbish. Often the suspension, but other things too. I mean, tyres often get changed. You know, that is a modification. Suspension is rubbish. Putting a different rear shock on a bike is a common thing. End cans. I mean, how many of us have changed the end can to either make it less obtrusive? I mean, for me, personally, I don't like exhausts. Okay, if motorcycles all had underbelly exhausts with a little trumpet coming out in front of the back wheel, that would be perfect. I'm a big disliker of exhausts, and of course the world we live in now, exhausts are huge because of the emissions controls. I had a Suzuki GSX-R 1000 K7 some years ago, and it had twin exhausts, and I mean, you'd think they'd come out of the NASA parts bin. I mean, they were absolutely huge, and I changed it to a tailor-made underbelly underslung exhaust. I'll show you a picture, and it was lovely, really lovely. I mean, completely changed the bike in terms of weight and the style and the noise. It was fantastic. So, what are the consequences of modifications? The consequences of modifications can be that you are obliged to tell your insurance company about modifications you've made. Now, depending on your insurance company, they may or may not think this is a good idea. Indeed, your first issue when telling the insurance company, when you're on the phone to Mr. or Mrs. Insurance Company and they're saying, have you made any changes, modifications to the bike? And you say yes. Can you tell me what they are? Well, I put a da-da-da-da-da-da on. And you're explaining this thing that you've put on that is a completely innocuous change to the bike, has no bearing on the performance, has no bearing on the horsepower, the capacity, anything, but they haven't got a clue what you're talking about. And because they haven't got a clue what you're talking about, immediately they're thinking, I don't think we want to insure this bike. And I've had problems with this myself. And that is one issue that you can have as a consequence of modifying. So then you're in this dilemma of, do I actually tell the insurance that I've made changes? Now, some insurers, I mean, talking about the UK here, have a list of things that you can change on your bike and you don't need to tell them about it. An end can, for example, often doesn't need to be disclosed to the insurer, provided it's road legal. And, I mean, let's face it, most of us don't have road legal end cans on because we changed it to make them noisier. I mean, we changed it because we wanted it to look better, but one of the consequences is that it actually sounds better too. and that may not be road legal, but you think, well, I really like it. But, you know, when you come to the insurance, you're in a tricky situation. The other thing that you need to consider with the consequence of modifications is, can I reverse the mods? Now, with custom builders, of course, it doesn't matter. I mean, a custom builder can take a biscuit tin and make a beautiful custom fuel tank out of it, and they'll paint a mural of a naked woman straddling a 10mm socket and writhing in ecstasy. And let's face it, if they painted a 10mm socket on the tank, that's probably the only time you'd see a 10mm socket in the workshop, because as we all know, once you put a 10mm socket down somewhere, you'll never see it again. So the only time you're going to see it is if he paints it on the tank. So the consequence of him doing this, to him, is irrelevant. It bears no, it doesn't even come into the frame of what he's doing and can I reverse it. The purist, of course, doesn't need to worry about anything. You know, they're still wondering whether their elder sister really is their mother, and the last thing on their mind is making any changes to the bike. So they don't need to worry. It's the people in the middle. It's people like me and you that are in this dilemma of, can we reverse the mods if we wanted to? I mean, mods don't add value to a bike, or very little. You know, if you spent if you bought a bike for 10 grand and you spent £1,000 modifying it, has the bike now become worth 11,000? No, of course it hasn't. If you put certain modifications might add a little bit of value, or they'd certainly make the bike more attractive to a buyer. I mean, if you had a bike that had Oxford heated grips on, now Oxford heated grips are ubiquitous, so if you were selling a bike and you listed that it had Oxford heated grips to a buyer, certainly in the UK where it's freezing almost the entire year, they'd think, well, that's something I don't need to do to the bike, because I'd want to put heated grips on. So it would add some value to that sale. However, painting flames along the side of the bike to make it look like something roaring and all the rest of it, that's not going to add any value to the bike at all. Indeed, I would suggest you would devalue the bike by doing that sort of modification. So can the mods be reversed? And indeed, would you want to reverse them? I know when I had my Gixxer 1000, the K7, when I put the tailor-made exhaust on and I followed the instructions religiously, it said, you know, remove the stock exhaust down to whatever where it all basically came into one pipe under the engine from the downpipes, and then you had to cut off the brackets, like hacksaw off the brackets that the old exhaust attached to. And so when I was reading through these instructions and it was saying you need to saw off and I'm thinking, blimey, well, I hope it works. You know, I hope this modification is something that actually does work, because otherwise I've just sawn off this bracket that's welded to the frame. You know, I mean, in order to correct it, you need a new frame for the bike. So quite a major sort of step to take in this modification. I mean, obviously I decided to go ahead with it and it worked and it looked amazing and it sounded great, and sadly, very, very sadly, I don't have that bike anymore. And the reason I don't have that bike anymore is because I was moving to France. I bought it in 2013, I moved to France in 2016, and at that time you could not import a bike from a foreign country unless it had ABS, and my bike didn't have ABS, so it wasn't going to happen. So sadly, very sadly, I had to sell it, but it was my absolute favourite bike. So can you reverse the mods, and do you want to? I mean, some people, they put bikes on for sale that you could buy an unfettered one for say 9 grand, and they've done loads and loads to it. You know, they've spent 2 grand on tubeless spoked wheels and a full exhaust system and all the rest of it, and they probably spent 3,000-4,000 or even more, £5,000. Well, this 9,000 bike is not suddenly worth 13 or 14,000. You know, you'd be lucky, and very lucky, to get £1,000 more than what an unfettered one would get. So you've got to decide, you know, do I want to take all these mods off and sell them separately? And then of course you've got to think, well, that's a right pain in the neck, because I've got to, you know, first of all I've got to buy a lorry load of bubble wrap, I've got to take it all off, put the other stuff back on, assuming you can of course, and then start putting it on eBay or on forums and hope someone wants to buy it. And if you get 50% of the value that you paid back, you'd be doing unbelievably well. So, should you do the mods? To me, yes, you should. I mean, my view on all of this is I am modding the bike for me. I bought the bike for me. I didn't buy the bike for the next owner. Because why would I? You know, I mean, you might have one eye on resale value, but then you'd fall into the purist category, because there's absolutely no way you'd want to in any way limit the resale value of that bike. So do the mod for you. Make the bike you want it to be. I mean, a while back I had a BMW R1100 GS. Okay, it was a 1996 bike. It was a somewhat foolish buy, and I don't have it anymore. But what was I going to say? Oh, that's right. And one of the things it had on it was it had this screen. Okay, now for anyone that's ridden an adventure bike, you will know, or adventure style bike, you will know that you are most likely to get buffeting from this plank of perspex pushing through the air in front of you. And the buffeting from this screen on the BM was atrocious. I mean, it was just, my head was being knocked, you know, senseless, trying to ride this bike. So I thought, well, bugger it, I'm going to cut the screen down. And I took about 6 or 7 inches off the screen. I marked it carefully and taped the screen where I was going to use this jigsaw, because it was quite thick perspex, and I jigsawed this screen lower, and it was perfect. It absolutely worked. And a few people, and I did a video about it, not about that specific thing, but about changes I'd made to that bike. And someone commented and said, well, I've been riding a bike similar to this for 40,000 miles, and it's been doing me head in, all this buffeting. If only I'd thought to cut the screen down. Well, why wouldn't you? And probably the reason you wouldn't is because you actually fall into the purist category, because you don't want to do anything that could in any way inhibit the resale. Well, I sold it. It got bought. The person who bought it never batted an eye that the screen had been cut down. I mean, maybe they didn't realise the screen had been cut down. I don't know. But I mean, and I'm sure it works perfectly for them. I'm sure that the bike that they've got now, that was mine, works for them with the lowered screen. Or maybe they wanted a higher screen, they bought a new one. Doesn't matter. The fact is, make the bike for you. Make it work for you. Don't make it work for the next person. That really is not the point. So that's all really I wanted to say about modifications. I know I haven't made a video for a while. I've been away skiing again. What can I say? So I hope you enjoyed the video, because that would really help me. And subscribe if you haven't already. That would help me even more. It'd be nice to get to 1,200 subscribers. That would be a milestone. So ride safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.